Right. Welcome everyone to the Solar Consultant Network's Monday Forum this October 3rd. Wow, we're already into October. Super exciting. For those of you that are thinking, what is the Solar Consultant Network? I've never really heard of this. I just was excited about some battery training. Well, the Solar Consultant Network is a group, a network that we have decided to get together and share insights about the solar industry. We don't care what company you work for or who you're with. What we do care about is that we help you help homeowners go solar. So with that being said, today I couldn't be more excited about our guest. Our guest is Spencer from Enphase, and he is training on how to size batteries and systems. And I know all of you are really always wanting to learn more and more about batteries, especially as you know, we have big weather events like the Hurricane Ian come through, that we know that this question of batteries is going to really start to come up more and more and more. So the more that we can get together and collectively understand it better, that we can help our homeowners make a better decision for what's best for them and their family's energy needs. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Spencer. Spencer, the Zoom is yours.
Awesome, Melissa. Well, thanks so much for that warm intro, and thanks for having me today. I had a great time with you guys about a month ago when we talked about storage and solar and microinverters, and kind of what a microinverter is and what's it's all about and why people should be excited to use that technology. And I'm happy to be back with a training on storage. Now, Ramsey, I see you're on the phone. I had a storage sizing training about a week or two ago. Were you on that training? Is that the same time of day? Yeah, it was for another team. And it really turned into a workshop. And so, I'm going to kind of lead this training the same way. And, if I do my job, I really don't let anyone on the phone off the hook for having a deep understanding of what I'm talking about. So sure, you could hear the concepts and you could kind of get it, but a deep understanding in my perspective is not just knowing it, but being able to teach it to others. So I'd like you to listen to today's training, not just from, do I get this knowledge, but would I be able to actually teach somebody else what Spencer's teaching today, right? And if you already heard my kind of perspective on sizing batteries, then you may say, okay, I got a good understanding of that, but you'll be able to listen from a new level, right? If you're not just listening to understand, but listening to understand to the level in which you'd be able to teach. And so when I say not let anybody off the hook for anything, it's really about, this is about energy math. Now, I say this often, that the energy math that I'm going to talk about today is the same math that you learned in, I think it was like 6th grade, maybe it was 5th grade. This is like arithmetic, multiplication, subtraction, and what's the other one? Addition. But this is like super simple stuff. And for some reason, I think we get so into the sales so quickly, some of the foundational basic just math that makes up how to think about sizing gets missed. And so I'm going to really dive deep into that. I'm going to ask questions for that. I'm going to ask people to participate. I'm going to ask people to say back, explain back to what I said in your own words, so I can kind of get a sense that people are really getting what I'm going to say. And I really think of this as a journey, like puzzle pieces are going to click during this conversation. Click, click, click. And I got to make sure the first one clicks in before we go to the next one. So if I ask a lot of questions, that's my goal, is to make sure it really clicks for you, so that at the end of this, you don't try to figure out how to size a battery. You think from sizing a battery. You can do the math on your calculator in 60 seconds, if not 30, right? Sizing a battery isn't a, 3-hour exercise. It really is pretty quick if you understand the fundamentals and you understand the right questions to ask. Okay, so let me share my screen, and let's just see here. And I'm just going to do this as a live presentation. It's sometimes easier to just be able to flip through Flip through these briefly, and I just want to update something real quick here, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, cool. So design and sizing. So I want to do some kind of housekeeping stuff first. And the housekeeping thing I want to talk about is just our system planner. If you're looking for a short-term way to kind of get connected to how do I size a battery, we do have a pretty cool tool, and I want to show you where it is. It's pretty simple to find. You just go to enphase.com and you go to homeowners and you click on design my system. And our system, you know, on the solar side is limited, but the battery functionality is really amazing in terms of what it can do. You type in a zip code and you click on this little button right here to kind of start it, get a starting point of how many kilowatt hours they use per day. And then once you click show my system estimate, there's a secret location called additional configuration. And this additional configuration will actually open up a picture of the homeowner's loads. Now, this is very, very detailed. In my opinion, it actually is too detailed. It, you know, you can, if you get too detailed and don't understand the big picture, you can lose the context and lose listening to the customer. But it's still a very valuable tool. And I want to kind of explain how it works real quick. And then we're going to talk about the big picture stuff. So how does this work? Well, you basically just say what loads the homeowner has and what they want on backup. Now, in this case, it shows quantity of 3 air conditionings. Anything you want to change, you can customize here to update and say, I just want to back up 1 air conditioner, and it'll show you the right size storage system to do that. Now, if you go down here to this other advanced area, I'm going to show you this tool partly because this is how I think about it from a high level. And when I talk about the 3 things I'm going to focus on making sure people understand today, it's going to be right in here: power, energy, and surge. So what are these 3 things and how do they relate to sizing your battery backup? Well, we're going to go deeper here, but in general, energy is how long it'll last. Power is how much you can run, and surge is how much it can turn on. And the way the tool works is it works on the greatest common denominator. So if you need enough right now, all the battery requirements are the same. So it basically scans all these loads. It looks at all these loads and says, okay, let me add up all these loads, figure out how much energy is needed. And I'm going to say my energy need is 17.1. Try to make this a little bigger. That means I need, I'm just going to round up and get a 20 kWh battery in this scenario. Okay. It says my backup power needs are 6.6 kilowatts. Kilowatts is a power rating. We need 20.2 kilowatt hours to get this many kilowatts. I'll talk about that more in a second. But basically, it checks to say how much power do all these things need, and then it says how much power do these things need to turn on, and it checks all 3, and then it gives you back that answer for the size storage unit you're going to need. Now, let me give you an example. Imagine I wanted to run the batteries for 25 hours. Okay, I need an outage for 25 hours. I just changed the time here. What you can see is the tool now says, well, your need is 26.7. The battery required is 26.9. It rounded up to this. We have 3 kWh intervals that you can get. It's not, most people just choose 10s, but for getting more detailed, it rounds up to this one. It says this is 2 10s and a 3. 2 10s and 2 3s actually. But what I wanted to point out is that you can see the power and surge are still low, and it just rounds this up to the highest denominator. If I took this and brought this down to 10, even though the energy required is only 13, it still rounds up to the highest denominator, meaning, you know, it needs 20 kWh to give this much power. So that's the system size it's going to recommend. And so that's how I recommend thinking about it too when we do this kind of more manual process. It's like, okay, how much energy do they need? This battery will cover that. How much power do they need? Well, this battery will cover that. Even though they have enough energy with that battery, the power requirement is higher. So I need to go with this bigger solution. Because you want to meet all their needs, right? You want to be able to turn on what they want to turn on, and you want to be able to, of course, have it run as long as they want. So I know I'm getting a little abstract here, but I promise it'll all come together soon. So we take all these loads, we calculate them. You can get more detailed in terms of, this is a 4-ton air conditioner, not a 3-ton air conditioner, right? You can put in more details in terms of exact wattages if you want. And then it will show you what the requirements are for each of those 3 factors, the energy, the power, and the surge. And they'll choose the highest one to design your battery that way. Now, if you really like this tool, you can even use it and put in the homeowner information and use a download. And the download, I just clicked it, it'll take a second. The download will create a pretty nice report with the system. The coolest thing about this report, in my opinion, is it actually shows the homeowner exactly what loads you said will back up for how long. If I was running a company and didn't have a platform like Solo, I would be printing these out and having the homeowner sign these. So hopefully at some point, Solo and Power will actually have their own kind of integration of our tool in here. But for now, you can use this ad hoc as needed. Now, I said it earlier, don't rely on the tool. If you're too reliant on the tool and you don't use your own brain, you're going to miss things, right? Because you say, well, the tool told me this, and you don't really know why. And so we're going to take the next 45 minutes and really make sure that you understand why. Okay, so let's jump ahead, and we're going to define 3 things as it relates to storage. Now, of course, I am from Enphase, but this training, I'd say 90% of the time would apply to any battery backup system. So this is knowledge that anybody who's selling storage should have, in my perspective. Okay, so energy, power, and surge. What is the difference between energy and power? Who wants to give it a shot? Ramsey, the training worked last week, I guess.
Let's see. No pressure. Energy is over a period of time, whereas power, let's say the actual size of the tube or the pipe.
Okay, cool. Yep. So energy is over time, and power is instantaneous. Does the utility charge you for power or energy?
Energy.
Energy. What unit is energy?
Kilowatt hours.
Thank you. And what unit is power?
Kilowatts.
Yep. Cool. So when you sell a solar system, is it measured in kilowatts or kilowatt hours?
Kilowatts.
Yep. And when you talk about energy offset, is that measured in kilowatts or kilowatt hours?
Kilowatt hours.
Yep. So Ramsey's fast. Anybody else want to give a definition? What is energy? What is power? Raising your hand. It's an underdeveloped skill for all of us. Who wants to define what is energy? What is power? One more person. I got him because Ramsey was at the last training, so I know he knows it. One more person.
I can give it a shot, even though I don't know.
Even if it's wrong, Barry, then you learn more than everybody else. I promise.
To me, energy is what you're using, the consumption.
Okay.
And power is what you're providing to offset that energy.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of tweak your answer a little bit in terms of these definitions. So energy is consumption. It's what you're using. And power is the instantaneous amount that you're using. Energy is consumption over time. So it's how much you're consuming in a whole day, for example, or an hour, or even a minute. Power is an individual, not an individual, it's a measurement of a moment. So I'm using 1 kilowatt of power and I'm using it for 1 hour. How much energy is that? It's 1
What?
kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
This is our math you told us to get ready.
This is the math, right? I got 1 kilowatt. I'm using it for 1 hour. How much energy is that? It's 1 kilowatt hour.
1,000 watts.
1,000 watts. Actually, it's not 1,000 watts. It's 1,000 watt hours. Okay, so if I have 1 kilowatt that I'm using and I use it for 2 hours, how much energy is that?
2 kilowatt hours.
2,000.
2 kilowatt hours, right? If I was using 2 kilowatts for 1 hour, how much energy is that? Thanks, Kelly.
2 kilowatt hours.
2 kilowatt hours. So, okay, we're starting to kind of make sense. How does this relate to batteries? Well, when we talk about consumption, we're also talking about battery capacity. So how much energy is there in the battery and how much of my energy usage can it cover is a conversation about energy. And that's something that we rate in kilowatt hours. We talk about power. We talk about it in terms of what am I pulling? What do I need to turn on? What loads do I have? And how much instantaneous power does that demand? So the analogy I use is that when it comes to a battery, it's kind of like a lake of water. And I'm measuring the battery capacity like the size of the lake. The larger the lake, the more water I can hold. The water being energy, right? The smaller the lake, the less water I can hold. If the lake is twice as big, I can hold twice as much water, just like if the battery is twice as big, I can store twice as much energy. Power, I say it's the size of the pipe. It's actually how much water you can get out quickly. Somebody in the chat wrote, who wrote this? Jimmy R wrote the measurement of voltage and current. Power is actually volt times amps, which is voltage times current. Volt is the pressure of the water, and amps is the size of the pipe, but because the pressure is basically the same, it's always 240. To make it really simple in terms of the way to think about it for now, I would just say power is the size of the pipe. Okay, so energy is the size of the lake. Power is the size of the pipe. If I have a really small pipe, I can only get a little bit of water out in any given instant. I can't water a lot of crops at the same time. If I have a bigger pipe, I can water more at the same time. So batteries are, they're rated, when you talk about an IQ battery 10 or an IQ battery 3, they're often typically rated in kilowatt hours in their energy capacity. Okay, and power is basically the inverters inside of the battery. So the bigger the inverter is, the batteries always have an inverter that they have to use to take the DC power from the battery and provide it to the loads. And so power is how much of that energy can I convert in any given instance? How much of it can I get out fast enough? How big's my pipe? And the larger inverter, the larger the pipe. In our case, the more microinverters, the larger the pipe. Right? Because more microinverters basically means more inverter power. Our inverters are rated in power. So if you talk about an Iq8 plus, there's a power rating at 295 watts, 300 watts, got an instantaneous ability to deliver power. And then surge we'll talk about in a little bit. Surge is also measured in kilowatts. And basically, when you first turn on a large appliance, you need a little extra power. So when you're talking about sizing a battery, you need to understand these terms really, really well. And think through them. And, at this point, like I said, it's going to take you, could take you an hour, and watch this video 3 times before you really get it. I don't know. But once you get it, you can figure these 3 things out in minutes. In minutes for a homeowner. Okay, any questions about energy power surge? We're going to talk about these topics more, but I want to make sure everybody's crystal clear. If you're not clear, it is your job to raise your hand. I'm going to call on one more person to define it now that we've walked through it. Can somebody define what is energy, what's power, what's surge? Not Ramsey and not Barry. How about you, Mike? You want to give it a shot?
Sure.
Cool.
So I mean, I think the analogy that you gave just a moment ago describes it best. Energy is like the lake. It's the capacity. It is the amount of energy that you use over a certain or given amount of time. The power is how much you can get in a moment. So the analogy of the pipe. So it's how much energy that is squeezed into a moment.
Yep.
And surge is just the like, I know that it takes a lot more energy to turn an AC on.
A lot more energy or a lot more
Power.
Oh, a lot more power.
Yep.
It takes a lot more power to turn an AC on than it does to run it.
Yep. Totally. Very, very good. Well said, Mike. Anybody else want to follow that definition up? Because it was really, I think you articulated it really well. Okay, we're going to go with that. Okay. Good job, Mike. Thanks for everyone's participation. Okay, so we kind of got these terms at least defined initially. Let's talk about how this relates to sizing a battery. Okay, and so the way I'm sizing, the way I'm walking through it is like, okay, does it meet their energy needs? What size battery would I need to meet their energy needs? Okay, great, check. This size battery is the right one for their energy needs. Okay, now let's see power needs. What are their power needs based on what we're talking about here? Okay, check, meets power needs, and then does this also meet surge? Check. Boom, that's the right battery. Oh, wait, doesn't meet their power needs. We need to bump up one for their power needs. Okay, let's go a little bit bigger. Check that surge. Of course, it's going to meet energy because it's bigger than the battery I already said for energy. Good. That's the right battery size. You know, as a consultant, you're consulting, right? You are advising. They trust you. If you can walk through that math, come up with the best solution and stand behind it and say, this is what, based on everything you said, everything I heard, this is what I recommend. And here's why. I mean, they may not choose you 75% of the time, but you know, you'll beat the other guy, most likely. Most likely. Okay, cool. So let's talk about energy, right? Check mark number 1. And the way I look at energy is I try to start with the daily kilowatt hour usage. So what are they using in a day? It's a great place to start. Now, all of this is back of the envelope math. So is it perfect? No, but will it get you really close and probably better than any design tool? If you become really good at it, yes, because you'll be able to hear things that the design tool can't. Should you use the tool? Sure, right? But this back of the envelope math will take you very far. Okay, so I'm starting with daily kWh usage. Why daily kWh usage? Because the typical battery design wants to last the night. You know, I got some great text messages from people in Florida who had blackouts, who were thrilled with the performance of their system. Why? Because their battery lasts the night, right? The sun came out the next morning, filled up their battery, and then it lasts the night again. And the sun, you know, even on a cloudy day, you'll still get 30%, 40% of your solar. So in most cases, a good design is a battery that'll last the night. You're not usually sizing a battery to last 3 or 4 days without solar. You're sizing a battery to last the night, you know, with hopefully 20, 30% left in over in the morning, right? A little bit of buffer. So if I'm trying to size a battery to last one night, I want to figure out how much energy they're using in 24 hours. It'll help me get to how much energy they need at night. So I start off with, what do they use in a day? We'll get to that, Jimmy. Great question. So I start out with what are they using in a day? So how do you do that? Well, you take their annual usage, divide it by 365, you take their monthly usage, divide it by 30, and you get their daily usage. In this scenario, I just said, okay, say they're using 800 kilowatt hours per month. Is this big enough to see? Do I need to zoom in to help? It is big enough? Okay. So 800 kilowatt hours per month divided by 30, that's 42 kilowatt hours a day. Now, one caveat here is that if you have an annual average, it is the annual average. It is not necessarily the month in which they're trying to back up their loads. So if the annual usage is kind of consistent, right? Maybe they're electric heat and electric cooling, and every month it's about the same in terms of what they use. Then sure, use an annual average. That'll be a great estimate. But if they're in San Diego and they're on gas heat, their summer cooling bill could be twice as high. Said better, their summer cooling usage, their energy usage to stay cool in the summer could be twice as many kilowatt hours as it could be in January when they're using gas to heat. And if they want to run their air conditioner with their battery when the grid's down, you better choose July to take the average daily usage, or maybe July, August, September, take an average. So you want to choose, when you figure out what's their daily usage, it's the daily usage based on their goals on when they want to run the battery backup. Does that make sense to everybody? It could be the opposite in Texas. Somebody could have electric heat in Texas. And, maybe in the wintertime, their usage is the most. Well, I'm going to want to choose the wintertime months that their usage is the highest so that I size the battery for that need. Now, if they said, I don't care about heat, I just want to use it in the summertime, or I just don't need to use the heat, well, then use the lower amount. Use what they use when they're not running heat, right? Use it based on what they need, what's important to them, and make sure your data supports what their goals are. Make sense? Okay, cool. So once we now establish their daily kWh usage, I'm going to estimate how much of that usage happens when the sun is shining. Why? Well, when the sun is not shining is when you need a battery. When the sun is shining, you're running your house directly off the solar. So I want to figure out how much of that daily usage happens when the sun is shining. And typically, and I have these, we just kind of chose that as an example for the rest of them. Typically, it's going to be somewhere between about half and 3/4 of the usage happens when the sun is not shining. So if it's somebody that doesn't run air conditioning at night, they run air conditioning at the daytime, they use a lot of energy during the daytime, I would say, okay, let's use the number half. We're going to cover about half of your usage when the sun is shining. And, most people are turning on their lights, they're running a lot of their stuff at nighttime. Remember, solar is only producing 8 hours a day, maybe 9, 10. And so you have the other 14 hours or maybe 16 hours when solar is not producing. You need to be able to support the home off the battery during that other period of time. So let's look at another scenario. Maybe they're in Florida and they run air conditioning all day long. Well, in that case, 3/4 of the usage might happen when they don't have solar power. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, here's their daily usage. This is 24 hours. What percentage of that happens when the sun's not shining? Meaning, what percentage of that do I need to cover by having enough water in my lake to provide the energy for the house? 66, I think that's a great number. 2/3, that would be my go-to. If I had to guess right after that, I'd say 66%. Is a great, it's right between the two. So some people say, well, if you're running the house off the sun, how do you know that you also have enough energy for the battery? It's a valid question, right? Okay, you're saying when the sun's out, I don't need the battery, but what if all the energy from the sun goes to the house? And then how do I know my solar is going to fill up the battery and power the house? Well, you design the solar system. you designed it for 100% offset. Now, if you didn't design it for 100% offset, another conversation. But if you designed it for 100% offset, you designed it based on what it's going to produce in 24 hours. Let me say that differently. You designed it on what they're going to use in 24 hours, and you designed it so that in 6 or 7 or 8 hours of production, it produces enough to cover the 24 hours of usage. So if you designed it at 100% offset, that's enough to cover what they would use during the daytime and to put enough in the battery bank for them to use the other 18 hours. Is this communicating? Great. The puzzle pieces are going click, click. Good. Okay, so we get to daily kWh usage. We're going to multiply that number by, I'm going to use, because I just did the math before for the rest of the equation, I'm going to use half, which is the most aggressive, right? The most conservative would be 3/4, because I'd say, okay, that means I need to cover a lot of it at nighttime. The most aggressive would be, that I'd ever use, would be half during the daytime. And so then I'm taking that half, which is 21 daily kWh for 100% storage coverage. So if I'm going to cover 100% backup, whole home backup for this house, and they use half their energy during the daytime, I should be able to do that with 20 kWh. Now, if they say I'm not running my air conditioning and I only want to do partial backup, then basically what you're going to do is you're going to say, well, what percentage of this number do you want coverage for? So if I'm only getting 10 kWh, I'm only getting 50% of what they would typically use in a day. So let me show you how fast I do this math. I'd say, okay, they got $1,200. Sorry, they have a 1,200 kWh monthly usage, 1,200 kWh per month divided by 30. Actually, is that, I think this math is wrong at the beginning. Hold on. 800 divided by 30. Oh, that's right. Yeah, this is wrong. Excuse me, that was wrong. It doesn't even matter that much. Like the main thing we've been working on is 42. So I just picked the other right number here, which is a coincidence. Maybe I updated at some point and now I knew the right number. So let's say it's, I don't know, 2,000 kWh a month. So I say 2,000 kWh a month. That's what you're using on average. Let me divide that by 30. That means every day you're using 66 kilowatt hours. What percentage of that happens in the daytime? Well, multiply that by 0.66. And so at nighttime, you're using 43 kilowatt hours. If I want to do 100% coverage, I'm going to go with a 40 kWh battery, which is our largest battery. And that's how fast it happens. I take monthly divided by 30, multiply it by 2/3. And I just figure out whether I'm going to go whole home or half of that or what percentage of that. And it's really easy to communicate that way to the homeowner. Hey, you're using about 42 kilowatt hours per day. I'm estimating that about 1/3 of that will be covered by the solar only, which means we need about 27 kilowatt hours to really cover your nighttime usage. So I'd recommend a 30 kWh battery. They say, oh, I really don't want to go with a battery that big, it's too expensive. You say, okay, well, that's 100% coverage. Maybe we want to drop down to 20 kWh and only get about 2/3. They say, well, you still can I still run my air conditioner? And then we're going to go to power and surge, and we're going to talk about those, and that'll answer that question. Okay, cool. So basically, I'll do one more example here. Oops, 33 kilowatt hours per year, 33,000 kilowatt hours per year. Divide that by 365. I get 90. If I multiply that by half, I would need the biggest system. Any questions about this energy math? Daily usage, usage when the sun's not shining. What percentage do I want to back up? Shoot, Melissa.
So I've got a question. So is this math, which by the way, this is the best way it's ever been explained to where my brain's finally understanding it. So
Good. Good.
Yes, thank you.
Same.
This is all helping me. Yeah, the lake analogy and the pipe, I'm visualizing it. Now, do the numbers change if you're using one of the Enphase backup, like the 8s? So let's say, like, you know, I've already sold the 7s to some people, so they would have some sort of battery math. And now the new Enphase ones, this is the battery math we're
Yeah,
using, assuming they're
it's
collecting energy in the day.
yeah, it's a phenomenal question. So, the math changes for what you can use during the day when you have 8s. But the math won't change for what you can support at night. So the big benefit of 8s is that you have no limit of how much solar you can put on any size battery. So, for example, if I did this 10 kWh with 50% backup, right? I said, okay, it's only 50% backup. They only have 10 kWh. If I had 7s, I probably would only be able to get another, let's just say 10 or 15 kWh during the daytime. I'd be able to fill the battery. I may be able to get 25 kWh total for the day. I'm not going to get all into the technical details. It could be another 20-minute conversation, but just to make the story really simple is the quantity of 7s that would be able to operate would be less than the quantity of 8s. And so, you know, I'd only be able to get 25 total during the daytime. I would still fill up my battery, but I wouldn't have this surplus of extra supply during the daytime. If
Perfect.
you do, yep. If you
That
do,
makes sense. Now, let me ask you one more question with that.
let me say one more thing first to
Right.
close, and then if you can not forget it. If you do 8s, even on a 10 battery, now I'm probably going to get all 42 kWh. And even though I can't store it all in my lake, even though it's raining and the lake's full, at least if I can divert a little bit more of that rain to some more crops, I'm getting a little bit of extra watering during the daytime, or maybe even a lot more extra watering. So it gives you total flexibility to maximize the amount of energy you use during the daytime. And if, for example, you had a big storage system, 20 or 30 kWh, and you would have to turn off some of the solar, maybe before you would only run one air conditioning during the daytime, but with 8s you can run 2. Or maybe before you'd only run one air conditioning, but with 8s you can run one and charge your car. So it gives you more power during the daytime, but I would still size this way.
Okay, perfect.
I would still size this way.
This is a great way then. So then our best practice here is to size this way. And then just a point of clarification for those people that use Power Platform.
Yep.
They don't need to click the adder button for the daylight only, because they'll get because obviously they already have the 8s. Now they're getting, let's say, a 20 kW battery. They don't need to check any other adders there, do they?
Correct. So when you look at this sunlight backup option, you could say that this 3 kWh battery is 3 kWh plus sunlight. And this 10 is 10 kWh plus sunlight. And this 20 is 20 kWh plus sunlight. Anytime you get 8s with a battery, you're getting the full sunlight power that's available from the 8s.
Great, thank you so much. And then
Great
we have
questions.
People that have their hands raised. I think I saw Mike.
Yeah, let's do it. We're going to talk about power next. So if you have any questions about energy or Iq8 or anything, let's focus on that. And then we're going to talk about power and surge.
All right. So Spencer, my question is, I'm glad that you touched on that last sunlight backup. So, you know, call it a 22 or 24 kilowatt battery. It's going to be 25 grand, right?
Okay, wait. So see if can anybody catch Mike's mistake in his speaking? I'm going to catch it, right? So he said a 20 or 22 kilowatt battery. Kilowatt hour battery.
Yes. Excuse
Okay.
me. 22
No problem.
kilowatt hour.
Very important.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yes, I do.
Oh, great. Thank you.
You know, somewhere in there, a 22 kilowatt hour battery is going to be, 25 grand. Sunlight backup is going to be 35 cents or 40 cents, 30 cents, somewhere around there per kilowatt. And so it's about a third of the cost. Would it not be more efficient just to have a smaller gas generator and go with sunlight backup and that combination? Because it's, especially if you're adding a dealer fee, 25 grand becomes 30 grand real fast.
Yeah. So I think, this is actually a question that came up on the call with Ramsey as well. It's a really good question, and whether you're asking for yourself or you're asking because homeowners say, well, why shouldn't I just do a generator? There's a few reasons to consider a battery over a generator. And I'll walk through my perspective on those right now. So the first reason is that a generator is never going to be able to capture your solar energy. So when you're in a rate structure where you don't have a good time of use, well, let's say it differently. When you're in a rate structure that doesn't have a good net metering program, all the extra energy that gets sold back to the grid, you might not get credit for. You may get no credit for that, right? Or in some cases, small amounts, some cases, no credit. In California, that story is becoming worse. Even if you're on net metering 2.0, it's becoming worse. And what do I mean by that? Well, right, you have the on-peak cost of electricity and you have the off-peak. And the on-peak cost, I'm going to put you on mute real quick, Barry. The on-peak cost in San Diego right now is 67 cents. The off-peak is 37. Even though you're locked into the net metering 2.0, there's nothing stopping the utilities from taking the on-peak cost and making it 90 cents in 2 or 3 or 4 years, or $1 or $1.25. Them increasing the distance between the on-peak and off-peak is something that we expect to continue to happen.
So Spencer, like in Texas, I'm in Texas.
Yeah.
And so not everybody, most people have gas, for the heat, and they have electric for cooling. So everybody's electric bill looks like a bell, right? And everybody gets hammered in June, July, and August in Texas. And so you have to get such a big system to support the AC out here that, it becomes the difference in adding, $10 a month or adding $40 a month. And so that's the reason that I was asking.
Yeah. What you said makes me think that you didn't hear what I said. So I want to go back to this for a second. This isn't about months. This is about an individual day. Because what happens is solar in California, as a leading indicator for other states, has produced so much energy in the daytime that there's no demand in the daytime. And the price that people are getting for the solar they sell back is going down and down and down. And the price they're getting for the solar that they're using, the energy they're using at nighttime is going up and up and up. So if you may sell a customer today that's on a great net metering program, that's 1-to-1, and 3 years from now, they're hosed, because all of a sudden the utility stops buying it back for 1-to-1. They say, we'll buy it back 1-to-10. There's lots of markets in the United States that buy it back 1-to-10. They'll sell it to you for 10 times what they'll buy it. So the first answer to your question about a generator is, why would I get batteries in front of the generator? Well, batteries is protecting your solar investment long-term. Generator will never be able to capture your solar and let you use it when you want it. Batteries creates complete independence so that you can use your solar energy when you want to use it. Now, some people don't like to make the investment and they're willing to take a little bit of a risk if utility structures change in the future, and that's fine. I'll totally support that if that's the way you want to go forward, Mr. Homeowner or Mrs. Homeowner. But if you want a long-term solution, my prediction is that everybody's going to be getting batteries, or you're going to probably want to get batteries in a few years, 3 to 5 years, 7 years. Now, you don't want to share that in a way that sells them off of solar, right? You got to dance through that conversation.
Sure.
But, that'd be answer number one. The second thing is no fuel, right? If there's a major outage and people are getting a generator, because of safety? Do they really want to be driving to the gas station with lines to try to fill up their gas when, you know, they can have their own power plant on their own home? The third is maintenance. Generators you got to maintain over time. You know, the fourth is when you get a battery, you're getting a 30% tax credit on the battery as well. The fifth is you can finance the battery as part of the financing. You usually can't finance a generator. Right?
So do you ever run into the problem with the 10-year and 12-year warranties being, you know, kind of limited?
On a battery?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a concern, but you know, batteries, even though they're warranted for 10 years, they probably last 15 to 20.
Okay.
So, you know, I think people are willing to, if they see the payback with the battery at 8-9 years, and they're getting their solar system and they know the battery is going to last probably 15, and they're getting resilience from the grid, I think that's an investment people are usually going to say yes to.
Okay.
Really good questions. Okay, let's move on to power. So we talked about energy. We talked about making sure the lake is big enough to support the amount of water they need in the evening. Let's talk about power. Power is the size of the pipe. And the best way for me to explain this is just to go to our table. Each battery has a certain amount of power it provides. Our 10, which is actually, this is actually out of date. I should update this, but this is a picture, so I'd have to find that spreadsheet. But this is now called the IQ battery 10. Provides 16 amps of continuous power at 240 volts. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what that's another niche down of energy math. But basically, because of the way electrical code allows you to only put 80% of the total breaker size on here, this 16 amps supports breakers up to 20 amps. So the long and the short story is that for a single battery of ours, you can support any circuit breaker up to 20 amps. So when I'm checking for power as a quick check, now if you're using another battery, you have to see how their batteries are rated in terms of power, right? And how many amps they can support. But for the quick and fast, but accurate math, I'm saying, okay, what breakers, what circuits do you want to back up? What are we talking about backing up? Are we partial home? Are we whole home? If we're whole home, they're probably most likely going to have breakers that are larger than 20 amps. They're going to probably have 30 and 40 and maybe even 50 and 60 amp breakers. And so I'm not able to back up any breakers larger than 20 amps on a single battery, a single 10 battery. If they have 30 and 40 amp breakers, now I'm saying the minimum power requirement to support those breakers is 2 batteries. If they have 50 and 60 amp breakers, I'm saying the minimum battery requirement to support those is 3 batteries. Okay, now a few follow-up questions I know you're going to ask them to preempt, and then I'll take real questions that I don't know you're going to ask yet. So one question that commonly comes up is, well, what if it's 10, 20 amp circuits? You're saying I can back up 10, 20 amp circuits? So within reason, yes. You can put 10, 20 amp circuits on backup. It doesn't mean you can run everything on every one of those circuits at the same time. That would be too much. But there's a few things that have made that kind of feasible. One is energy efficiency. Often a 20 amp circuit that used to support a lighting circuit before used to be for incandescent lights, which would have 10 or 15 amps of that 20 amp circuit needed. Now that same circuit might only have 1 amp of draw when all the lights are on. The other reason is this 20 amps, like I said, is 240. So it actually supports 2 20 amp continuous kind of loads at 120. The other thing that makes this really simple is this is code. So electrical code 71015 says you have to support the largest breaker on backup. See, it says the largest load, but I'm using this as a way to figure out the largest load and go backwards. So what I'm doing is I'm basically saying, okay, what's the largest breaker? It's this. What's the largest load that I want to back up? The largest breaker of the largest load. And then what's the largest battery, or what's the battery size I need to cover that? And that's power. It's really simple. Is my pipe big enough? I know we're getting close to time. I can go a little bit over, but I just want to ask if there's any questions about power. Then we're going to start talking about surge a little bit. Does that make sense to people? That as you add on more batteries, you're increasing the pipe size. You got to make sure that the pipe is at least big enough to support the largest load if it was at full clip. Cool. So in the conversation with the homeowner, I'm saying use this many kilowatt hours per year, but this is, you need 20 kWh of batteries. I go to this next table and I say, what do you want to back up? They say, I want to back up my air conditioner. I look at the air conditioner breaker. It's on a 40 amp breaker. I say, good to go. I look at the air conditioner breaker and they say, and it's on a 50 amp breaker. I say, we're going to have to bump up to a 30 kWh battery system if you want to back up your air conditioner. This battery won't support an air conditioner that's on a 50 amp breaker. And that's power. Moving on, let's talk about surge. Surge is that instantaneous draw at the beginning. It's that pipe needs to become really big to turn on the air conditioning. Why? It's like a car that's standing still. When you go from 0 to 60, the RPMs go up to like 6,000. Once you get up to 60 miles an hour, the RPMs drop down to like, 800 or something. And they stay right there as long as you're not accelerating. It takes more energy to take a motor and start spinning it up, rotating it really fast. It's standing still. You got to spin it up real fast. It pulls a lot of energy. Now, one of the tricks that Jimmy asked about earlier is, can you install a soft start? And yes, Power does install soft starts for all systems that are 30 or larger that have air conditioning. They include it in the pricing. And if you are installing a 20 with an air conditioning, you'll probably want to budget an extra $500 for a soft starter. Our batteries can surge 1.5 times that you can do continuous. So there's a label on air conditioners that'll say what their LRA, which stands for locked rotor amps, that means the initial amount that you need to draw. And you can basically divide that by half, check out the surge of the battery, and see if you're kosher or not. If the LRA says 112, I'm saying 112 divided by 2, 56. I'm probably going to want 3 batteries on surge because it's 56 and I want to make sure I have enough surge power to cover that. Thanks, Jody. This will be recording, so if you want to jump on, we're going to wrap up pretty soon here. So I'm going to stop for questions. If you love this stuff, there's more available. Mostly, obviously, I met Melissa through Power. So there's more available on the Power Enphase Facebook page that I post trainings. And I actually have an advanced one just about surging large appliances in about 2 weeks on Tuesday at 11. You can join that as well. And, I'd be happy to do a follow-up training if there's enough questions in another month or two, Melissa.
That's perfect. Thank you. I know a lot of people will be really excited to watch this recording. We kind of did a little bit of a survey out there to the Solar Consultant Network, and this was like the biggest thing that consultants felt they need help with. And Spencer, you did an amazing job with all of your analogies and things. And again, I really think you helped paint a good, clear picture to help us here with the correct sizing of batteries. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure being with you today, and thanks for having me. And yeah, always good connecting. And I would really encourage you to work together to build knowledge, right? Like sell me a battery real quick, size me a battery real quick. I use this much per month, and see if the other person can walk you through it. And then, if I had more time, that's what I would do with you guys. I'd kind of do some more mocks.
I really like that idea. So everybody, you know how on Thursdays at 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, noon Eastern, we have a solar consultant open forum Q&A. So I'm just going to put it out there right now that let's start when we attend those. We'll maybe just do a couple fun battery storage little exercises, because I think the more we keep doing it and hearing it, understanding it, we'll be able to explain it better to our homeowners. And
Totally.
we're consultants. We need to be able to truly consult them on their energy needs and battery needs.
Brilliant. And 5 or 10 times, Melissa, you run through it, it becomes second nature. So I know
That's
a lot of
great.
people on the phone are, I know Shelly's probably already there. Carol's probably already there. Ramsey's probably already there. Elizabeth.
Yep, we've got
Yeah.
a good crew here. So if you still have time, I do have some people with their hands up. Do you
Yeah,
have?
I'm happy to stay on for a
Okay.
few more minutes. Who do you want to start?
Shelly, did you want to? I think I saw you with your hand up. Do you still have your hand up?
I do. Lisa's been waiting longer than me, though.
Okay, well, you're so nice.
What
Lisa,
integrity.
you're up.
Oh, Shelly, she's awesome. Yeah. So my question has to do with sunlight only. I am here in Texas, and oftentimes the systems I'm selling might be anywhere from 70 to 80% based on the co-ops that we might be working in. And so I've been curious, Spencer, and I've taken good Enphase training, and this has been excellent. I just love the visualization. So when I'm explaining sunlight only and how it works with my homeowners, I do let them know that the sun has to be shining, and then the inverters can actually supply power to their house. So the question is this: will the Iq8 inverters supply power during a blackout during the day to the whole house?
Yeah. So
Or is it just
great.
limited to certain circuits?
It's a great answer and question. And we didn't really get into all the aspects of system design today, but typically, there's 2 standard systems that people sell. One is what we call partial home backup, and the other is called whole home backup. And the distinction is really the difference between what breakers get put behind the switch. So the switch opens the connection to the grid so that you can't send energy back to the grid. The switch separates the microgrid from the grid, right? The microgrid being the house, the batteries, and the loads. And so when you're partial home, only some of the circuits are getting moved over. When you're whole home, all of the circuits are behind the switch. And how many circuits get moved over is really dependent on the size of the battery backup system. Now, technically, you could probably move over some more circuits and use them only during the daytime. But the issue with that is customer experience. If you put a ton of circuits on there and there's a cloud overhead, they're going to be kind of bummed, right? So with sunlight backup, we only guide to put 4 circuits on backup. Now, those are 4 circuits and not 4 loads, meaning, 1 circuit breaker can cover 4 outlets, 2 light switches. It can cover a lot more than you'd expect. But we guide that in sunlight backup. You only put 4 circuits on backup. In the future, when we have more advanced load control solutions, things that can automatically turn off breakers, like the span panel or other smart panels, we may have more integrations where you could be a little more aggressive and put more loads on backup that could only be supported from a smaller, less resilient backup system, right? The sunlight backup system is not very resilient because if a cloud comes overhead, you're kind of stuck, right? Get no batteries. And so that's why Power and myself and a lot of people really recommend a minimum starting system of a 3 kWh battery, because at least you're getting a little bit of battery backup for when the cloud comes overhead for the nighttime. Does that answer your question?
Yes. This has just been very informative. I try and attend all your training, Spencer.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Great question. And there was a question in the chat that said 4 circuits at 120 volt AC. And yes, it's 4 120 volt circuits.
Okay. Thank you.
Is the guidance. Cool. Shelly's next. I get a little nervous when Shelly as a question, because I know she's already given me the basic ones, right? She's got to have something new for me.
No, this is an easy one for you, Spencer. And I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. And I think it would be really helpful for everyone else too, who runs across this. I run across homeowners, and I had one today, who say, well, they told me that I didn't need a battery because the IQ8 inverters store power.
Yeah, the IQ8 inverters do not store power. The IQ8 inverters do create their own electrical grid. So what's an electrical grid? Well, the key signatures of an electrical grid have a consistent voltage and a consistent frequency. And so the IQ8s mimic or create their own voltage and frequency so the house can turn on without a battery. See, it is one other advantage of the IQ8s that I don't talk about a lot, but I could, spend 60 seconds on. With a Tesla battery and every other battery that I know in the industry, the battery turns on the solar. Right? So what does that mean? Well, the solar needs to see something to say, turn on. It's actually called anti-islanding. It's a safety thing, right? You probably have heard of that before. Anti-islanding, if the grid goes down, the solar turns off because it doesn't want to electrocute people on the grid. So the solar needs to see the battery voltage and frequency to say, hey, look, it's safe to turn on. It's safe, even though the grid is off. And it is safe because the switch is open and the battery is providing this pretend grid according to a set of testing. Okay, so in most systems, the battery tells the solar, hey, it's safe to turn on. With an IQ8 system, the IQ8s are smart enough to be able to turn on without a battery. And why that's meaningful is if the battery ever gets fully discharged, if the battery ever goes to zero, say somebody runs it down, we have safety protocols at 5%, but then they turn the system back on, it goes down a little bit more. They turn it back on, it goes down a little bit more, and they drain the battery all the way to nothing. If you have some other technology, the next morning when the sun comes out, the solar won't turn on because the battery doesn't have enough juice to say, hey, it's okay, you can turn on. With IQ8s, the IQ8s will turn on their own. We call it black start or jump start. So I know that was a little bit longer of an explanation than you probably asked for, but to summarize, IQ8s don't have a battery in them, but they do create their own electrical grid, meaning they can simulate the grid even during an outage, even without a battery.
No, that's super helpful, and I really appreciate it. And it was, I definitely was able to articulate that, no, that's not true, and some of what you said, but you helped elaborate it. And just to be clear, it's when, they've been told that by competing companies or whatever.
Yeah,
So
very, very valuable to clear that up for them and help them understand the reality of it. You don't want them to oversell. And I never liked the negative selling, but I would gently say that, some people like to, really hype up, things to get people excited. I really focus on being really, really clear and accurate and real with my customers so that you have a clear understanding and have expectations that I think most people would want to buy from somebody who's more less trying to get them excited and more just giving them accurate data so they can make a great decision.
Yeah, and I love what you said earlier. Also, that with that there's and it's helped me actually win a lot of deals from other people that are looking at other companies, not only just being able to say, well, that's actually not correct about this issue, but also what you said. It's like most people think about batteries as that backup option with the grid when the grid is down, but there's two reasons, right? There's also that it has to do with the net metering, and in places where, like we've seen our net metering just go to poo-poo this year in Texas, and that's, being able to explain that to people has helped a lot with being more consultative and people understanding that, like, hey, wait a minute, these are, I'd rather go with this person. And I would just like to will you elaborate on what Barry just asked? Because Carol, that's like Spencer said earlier, all the batteries come with sunlight backup, right? You only have to purchase it if you're purchasing it by yourself.
Yeah,
By itself.
I'm gonna clarify two things. And one, I want to expand on what you asked in terms of time of use, and then net metering, and then I'll answer Barry's question. You know, I love analogies, and it seems like you guys do too. So, you know, you may want to just say that, you know, consuming your own solar power is the best, right? Using your own solar energy, and this might not be any analogies, but it's on the same track of that, right? You want to use your own energy. That's awesome. And any extra energy right now that you have, you're selling back to the utility. Here's the problem. Would you rather control? Well, here's the problem. In the future, what they buy it for, we don't know. So what the battery does, it's going to allow you to capture that energy yourself and control the energy that you produced, and you can use it when you want, right? It's your power. You control it when you have a battery. Otherwise, you're kind of subject to what they'll pay for it for, and they can change that, right? So I think there's a really strong case to be made there. Barry, to clarify, IQ8s, when you choose it on the solar proposal, there's no backup that comes with them. Zero. If you go into, I think it's adders, you got a list of options. And those adders are these options that you see right here on the screen right now, if I'm still sharing. These adders will add on one of these various options. It'll add on making the IQ8 to operate during the daytime during an outage, which requires a switch and the controller and moving backup loads. It's a whole kind of rewiring. It can be, you know, them operating during the daytime with a battery, right? And anytime you get a battery, they're automatically operating in the daytime because they get the switch and everything else. So hopefully that clarifies your question. Does it? Good. Carol, one last question and we're going to wrap for the day.
Sure. And what I'd like, Spencer, is actually to do this in a longer session to talk about my question. But just briefly, I have customers with whole home generators right now, and adding a battery to that mix is a great addition because what you're effectively doing is microgridding.
Yep.
So my question is, and I know in the Enphase University on battery storage, you already talk about the generator and how great it is. Is it available now? If not, when?
So I'm opening up another presentation. I hope this is okay, Melissa. I know you're did you stop recording?
No, I can stop though.
It's fine. I know you're very agnostic to any company, and I give these trainings from Power, so I just want to be sensitive to that. This was a while ago. Tomorrow I'm actually doing a training on best practices. The following Tuesday, I'm talking about clipping, talking about storage design. This training, I'm going to talk about specifically generators. So this will be.
So real quick, this is a clarification for anybody listening. The training showing right now are if you're part of the Power platform. If you're not part of the Power platform, we can go ahead and talk to you about that if you want to get access to these trainings.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. So let's see here. 4, 11, 12. This generator integration, I think, will be on the 25th of October. In the meantime, Carol, here's where I point you to. Go to enphase.com and go to installers, go to storage. I'll put it in the chat too, and go to generator support. The feature is live today, and it's been live for a little while now, and it's working great. Power does not have a process to integrate a generator as part of the installation. So you need to be a little more, there's a guy named Mike Patterson out of Florida, and he's done a lot of these generator integrations. So he created a partnership. He found somebody locally who installs generators. He puts it into his deal. They do all the hookup, and the installer knows how to do it. And so you got to be a little bit more crafty in terms of, it's like if you want to sell a heat pump with a solar system. Sure, you could do it. You do the adder, you get an HVAC guy, but you got to kind of be a little bit more crafty there. The cool thing about this webpage that I sent you is if you scroll down, there's a tech brief, and the tech brief will explain all about how the generator works. It'll have a list of, let's see here, where's the list here? Oh, it's somewhere along here. Here we go. As a list of all the generators we've tested. This is a lot so far. And any other generator that's not on this list, technically could be on, we just would have to want to test it. You'd have to send it over, we check the specs. So we got quite a long list of different generators that are qualified. I'll put this whole tech brief in the thing. And so this would give you a great overview of how the system works. I also would recommend, as part of Enphase University, there's a 30-minute training on generator integration, just on generators. So if you go to Enphase University, I'm going to log in real quick. I'll put the link right in the chat as well. And I really appreciate the extra time, Melissa, to be with your awesome people.
Well, like I said, it was the whole consultant network. It was just everybody really wanted this training. So
beautiful.
We need it.
Beautiful. It's a new technology and it's becoming more and more in demand. And the learnings.
I think after we, the more everybody keeps looking and seeing what happened, with Ian out there, that I think we're going to hear everybody wanting batteries. I know we saw a huge peak after the Texas freeze, and I think Ian in Florida is going to really be driving people to wanting those batteries.
I agree 100%.
And something else that we don't, of course, want to always bring in politics, but let's just be real here. Tell anybody, go look at what's happening, read the news, and tell me that somewhere inside in your being, you're not a little bit concerned about energy and governments, whatever government nation it is, controlling the energy. So it really is independence, and it's something that is going to be on people's mind, because the media is going to be shoving energy into their face, especially when we start to see what Europe will what will happen to them this winter with their energy prices because of the situation they're in. And in the US, we can say, do you want to, we don't want that to ever be in our situation. So just get a battery. Now you're really truly energy independent.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say to close, for me at least, is I think consultants, when it comes to batteries, get in our own way the most. And when I first started selling batteries 2 years ago, I had my own concerns get in the way of selling large systems. I thought people would only want to buy 10. And it took me seeing 4 batteries, 3 batteries. Oh, I sold this, to be like, wow, like people are buying these big battery systems. And it took, months and months to change perception. I'll try to give you a little bit of a shortcut. Like, people will buy big batteries. People will spend a lot of money on batteries. People will spend a ton of money to protect their home from a blackout. Home prices now are, $750,000, usually more, right? So spending, 3 to 5% of that home value to protect your house when there's a blackout, people will spend the money. It's becoming more and more valuable.
That is a perfect way to end it. Thank you so much, Spencer. As always, you're just such a wealth of knowledge. And thank you, everybody who attended today. If you want to check out the recording, you can find it on our Solar Consultant Network YouTube channel. Please hit the subscribe button so you can stay in communication and see all of our great trainings. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, everybody.
Melissa and Spencer.
Bye,
Thanks so much.